Hola, this is Dino Delano, and this is Kundalini, the Awakening of Consciousness, number 2. Now, in number 1, one of the things that we touched on there was how our belief systems, how what we think and believe, so on, controls our awareness. So the expansion of consciousness, then, is the letting go of the things that we believe, and then our consciousness expands. We touched on the story of Tierra del Fuego and how the natives could not see Darwin's sailing ships and so on. How about your self-esteem? Do you think that that's maybe also controlled by your belief systems, by what I would call a fabricated self that we get from our reality? Indeed it is. That is why one of the reasons why in the last video I said that our value systems suck. Suck meaning that they do not support our environment. Our value systems do not support the actual thing that supports us, which is the earth. Let me go back a little bit. Go back to the 60s when I owned 5 businesses. I went broke toward the end of the 60s. I lost everything that I had, and something very interesting happened to me at that point. I was unable to go into the restaurants that I used to go into the bars and the social places that I normally went, because I felt embarrassed. I felt belittled. I felt like I had lost myself. Now, why was that? Because my self-esteem was based on how much I was worth. And of course, going broke, I was now worth nothing, or let's say very little in that sense. Now, strangely enough, it happened to me again some years later. In the process of happening again some years later, I went through the exact same experience again. Well, in the process, Kundalini had opened. Kundalini, by the way, begins to dissolve dysfunctional beliefs. In other words, beliefs that do not work within the mind-body system as a whole. In other words, they are not holistic systems, so this Kundalini begins to change that process, the awareness, the energy, whatever we want to call it. Well, I begin to realize that my personal self-esteem had been based on money. It had been based on the clothes that I wore, the car that I drove, all of those kinds of things. So in that sense, my self-esteem, or the self that I had, was a fabricated expression of life. It was an image in that sense. Once I begin to realize that, then I begin to change, and my value system also begin to change. I begin to perceive that what we were doing was destroying our own environment. But the reason that people destroy their environment is that they don't see themselves as the earth, or as a part of the oceans, or as a part of the Gulf, or as a part of the air. So we then become willing to destroy our own environment because we believe at some level that keeping oil intact, keeping all of these systems intact, like coal, for instance, etc., is literally, in that sense, preserving us, when in fact it is doing just the opposite. So our value system that we have, and I'm certainly generalizing, it may not be yours personally, literally destroys our environment rather than makes our environment better. Because perhaps you have wondered, just like I have, why would we shit in our own backyard? Why would we destroy the very earth that feeds us, that gives us water, that literally manufactures and creates the breath that I take? Because without any of those, I will not survive as a human being. The species will not survive. The animals will not survive. So why would I support then something that is working against it? Because my belief systems, because of what I think and believe, what I have been taught since the time that I was a child, what was valuable to me. So let's slow down here a moment. If you will then go back into your history and begin to take a look at what you have been taught was valuable, what you have been taught, conditioned, okay, to believe is who you are as a human being, what makes you valuable as a human being, you will often find that much of that is a fabricated system of social reality. It is a fabricated system of what we believe is true, but that system supports industry. That system supports the machine that keeps capitalism in that sense going. Because if you look at the capitalistic society, we are a society that must continually devour, okay, the earth that we live on in order to sustain itself. One of the recent things that was on the internet, which I thought was a very interesting statement, is that people, because of the economy where it's at the moment, are holding back in their spending. And they said because they're holding back in their spending, it is holding back economic recovery. In other words, our economic recovery is dependent upon our consumption. What do we consume? We consume the earth. We consume the forest. We are now in the process of consuming the oceans in that sense by killing it with oil. So all of these things that we are doing that we believe are so valuable are actually working against us, not for us. But that again has to do with our beliefs and our conditioning. Our beliefs and our conditioning in that sense are literally blindfolding us. They're keeping us from seeing the truth of our reality. The truth of our reality is always present when we let go of fear. As Jim Powski again said in his book, love is letting go of fear. And as I say, awareness is letting go of fear. The dentist does not really want to let go of tooth decay because that means the end of his profession. The coal miner does not want to believe in global warming or that coal creates lung diseases and various problems within the environment because that is a threat to their money. That is a threat to their livelihood. In that sense, they feel that it is a threat to their life. So if something is actually, literally, a threat to our well-being and our life, we will not look at what we are doing on an unconscious level to destroy our literal reality. People do this in their relationships. They destroy their relationships oftentimes because they're afraid their lover is going to leave them. That is their belief system. That is what they have been conditioned to believe, maybe from something that happened in their childhood with a mother or a father. Again, very simply, if you and I will take the time to begin to examine our belief systems about money, about relationships, about value systems, about self-esteem, we will begin to undo our insanity and literally become sane. All right, thank you for being with me. This is Dino Delano. If you go to coolzenhealing.com and take a look at the book, Discover the Magic, there is a lot of valuable information there that will help you in this process. Thanks for being with me. Dino Delano.